Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Intimacy Lab. I want to ask you something that might feel uncomfortable, but that's precisely why we need to talk about it. Have you ever felt that strange ache in your gut when you sense that something is happening behind your back, but you can't quite prove it? The late-night texts, the sudden bursts of distance, the way her laughter sounds softer when she looks at her phone, but different, as if it's no longer shared with you. This is the silent erosion of intimacy that so many men over 30 face today. A quiet betrayal that begins not in a hotel room, but in the heart, in the way attention shifts, in the subtle recalibration of loyalty. And here's the difficult truth. By the time you suspect an affair, it may already be physical. Tonight, I want us to step into that space together, with courage, not fear, because understanding is power. We're going to unravel 6 messages she sends, consciously or unconsciously, that reveal when the affair has crossed the threshold from emotional to physical. These signs are not always obvious. They live in nuance, tone, timing, and behavior, so stay with me. Let's not look away from this painful topic, because what you learn here may help you protect your dignity, your heart, and your future choices. Let's begin. You know, it's remarkable how often infidelity begins in silence. Not the dramatic kind of silence that's loud with accusations or slammed doors, but a quieter, almost imperceptible one. It happens in the pauses, in the way she hesitates before answering a simple question. It happens when you realize she's no longer fully with you, even when she's physically present. And yet, most men wait too long to trust their intuition, telling themselves they're imagining things or overreacting. But intuition is not paranoia, it's pattern recognition, born from familiarity and intimacy. You know her rhythms. You know her voice when she's tired or when she's distracted. So when those rhythms shift, it's worth paying attention. Tonight, I want you to really hear what I'm about to share. We're going to explore 6 key messages that a woman sends when the affair is no longer simply emotional, when it has crossed into the physical realm. These are subtle, layered signs that often go overlooked, but they matter. They tell you where the relationship truly stands, whether you want to see it or not. Let's start with the first one, the message of sudden unavailability. You may notice that her time becomes scarce not in the normal, everyday way where we're all busy, but in a pattern that feels abrupt and poorly explained. It's as though entire swaths of her life are suddenly off, limits to you. She used to tell you about her lunch plans, her meetings, her errands, and now her calendar feels vague, incomplete, cloaked in a kind of fog. You ask where she's been, and her answers feel too short, just out, just busy, just needed some time. These may sound innocuous, but they often mask a deeper shift. And the key here isn't just that she's less available. It's that her unavailability feels guarded, like a curtain being drawn between you and her private world. This kind of sudden absence often signals that the affair has crossed into the physical. Why? Because emotional affairs thrive on sharing and openness, a kind of emotional exhibitionism where the person in the affair might almost want to be caught. But when things become physical, secrecy hardens, the stakes are higher, the guilt is different, the logistics need to be covered. So when she becomes abruptly unavailable not once, but as a pattern, and when the explanations seem thinner than usual, your intuition may not be lying to you. This brings us naturally to the second message, the message of unexplained irritability. It's one of the most painful ironies. When a woman is involved in a physical affair, she often begins to treat her partner with a kind of low-grade irritation or impatience that wasn't there before. She might snap at small things, roll her eyes at your jokes, or seem perpetually disappointed with you in subtle, biting ways. This isn't simply because she's falling out of love, it's because she's carrying an internal contradiction. On the one hand, she's physically connected to someone else. On the other hand, she's still here in this shared domestic space, pretending that nothing has changed. That dissonance has to go somewhere, and often it leaks out as irritation. It's not that you've suddenly become more annoying. It's that your very presence now reminds her of the secret she's keeping, the duplicity she's living. And it's uncomfortable to sit with that discomfort, so irritation becomes a way of pushing you away emotionally, making her own feelings easier to manage. This irritation may seem disproportionate. You misplace a cup and she sighs deeply, as if it's the last straw. You suggest a movie and she reacts as if you're imposing on her freedom. These reactions aren't about the cup or the movie, they are about the chasm that has quietly opened between you, one that is now widened by a physical bond she has forged elsewhere. What's essential to understand here is that these first two messages, unavailability and irritability, feed off each other. The less available she becomes, the more irritable she might get, and the more irritable she becomes, the more distant you might feel. And distance creates a space where the affair can deepen without interruption. I want you to think carefully about how these patterns have played out in your life, or even in your past. Not from a place of blame, but from a place of awareness, because awareness is what can help you reclaim your dignity. It helps you decide calmly, clearly what kind of relationship you are truly in. It's difficult, isn't it, to face these signs head on without flinching, especially because we all have a deep desire to maintain the narrative we want to believe, that we are enough, that things will return to normal, that this is just a passing phase. But denial only prolongs pain. Recognition opens the door to choice, and here's something else to consider. These messages she's sending are not necessarily deliberate. They're often unconscious, almost reflexive. She may not even realize how abrupt her distance feels to you, or how harsh her words sound in the quiet space between you. But whether conscious or not, the impact is the same and the message is clear. So as we reflect on these first two messages, the withdrawal into sudden unavailability and the emergence of unexplained irritability, I want to invite you to lean into your emotional intelligence. You may already feel it in your bones that something has changed, that feeling deserves your attention. Not paranoia, not aggression, but attention, curiosity, and care for your own heart. Let's continue this journey together, because the next signs reveal even more subtle layers of how an affair moves from fantasy to reality, from longing to flesh. You may have already begun to notice how these subtle shifts, her sudden unavailability, her inexplicable irritability, create not only distance but disorientation. When the ground feels like it's moving under your feet, it's hard to trust your perceptions. And that's precisely why we need to talk about the third message, changes in her language and communication style. Communication is often the first bridge that begins to crack when an affair becomes physical. Before, she may have shared openly with you stories about her day, frustrations, small details that connect two lives into one intimate narrative. But now listen closely. The tone changes, the details disappear, her conversations become vague, shallow, less animated. You ask her about her day, and she gives you the broad strokes, but the color is missing. What's even more telling is that she might suddenly adopt new expressions, phrases, or ways of speaking that you've never heard from her before, language that doesn't sound like it belongs to her history with you. These small linguistic shifts are not random. Language is deeply social. We adopt the tone, style, even vocabulary of the people we are closest to. When her words change subtly, it can be a sign that she is now intimately influenced by another relationship, a relationship that has moved into physical territory, where intimacy isn't just about thoughts and feelings but shared bodily experience, and it isn't just language, it's tempo. A woman engaged in a physical affair may speak more hurriedly, as if eager to end a conversation that once flowed easily. Or she might become slower, more cautious with her words, measuring what she says to avoid revealing too much. Both patterns are revealing because both reflect an internal split between what she's saying and what she's experiencing elsewhere. It's important that you don't mistake this shift as simple distraction or preoccupation. The quality of presence she brings to your conversations will feel different, thinner, more distant, lacking the natural curiosity and mutual engagement that once defined your interactions. And from this erosion of communication emerges the fourth message, the sudden and unexplained attention to appearance. Now, let me be very clear, there's nothing suspicious about a woman wanting to feel beautiful, to dress well, to care for herself. Self-care and style are acts of self-expression, but what we're talking about here is context and contrast. You may notice that she's suddenly dressing differently for seemingly routine situations. She's more meticulous than usual about her clothes, her hair, her makeup, even when you're not going anywhere special or when she's stepping out alone. You might remember how she dressed when she first fell for you, the excitement, the playful attention to detail, the way her appearance reflected an inner desire to impress and attract. That same energy may now be redirected somewhere else, but this time it feels out of sync with your shared life. There's a particular quality to this shift that is hard to articulate but easy to feel. She's not doing it for herself, and she's not doing it for you. Her appearance begins to reflect the gaze of someone else. It's as if she's getting ready not for a place or even a purpose, but for a person who now occupies an emotional and physical space in her world. And here's something you may recognize intuitively. When you compliment her on this change, her reaction feels off. Maybe it's indifference, maybe it's awkwardness, or maybe it's dismissiveness. Either way, the compliment doesn't land the way it used to. That's because the compliment is no longer the currency of connection between you. Her attention has already shifted elsewhere. This is the disorienting part of infidelity that so many men struggle with, not because they miss the change, but because they doubt their own right to question it. You may hear yourself thinking, am I being controlling? Am I imagining things? Maybe she just wants to feel good about herself. And yet, deep down, you feel the difference. You feel that this sudden attention to appearance is not about self-care or confidence, it's about seduction and not directed at you. These first 4 messages we've explored weave a quiet but undeniable narrative of change. Her time is no longer fully yours. Her patience has thinned, her words sound foreign, shaped by someone else's presence, and now her body, her visible self, seems curated for another gaze. There's a painful irony in this, isn't there? As her desire becomes more alive elsewhere, she may seem less alive with you. You may feel like an observer in your own relationship, watching her animate herself for a world you're no longer part of. And this is where many men hesitate. They hope that if they give more space, show more trust, or become more tolerant, things will return to the way they were. But here's what I want to invite you to consider. These messages are not isolated behaviors. They are symptoms of a shift that is already happening at the deepest level. Her body, her time, her words, they have begun to orient toward another relationship that has crossed the line into physicality. And yet, even in this difficult terrain, you are not powerless. Quite the opposite. Understanding these signs allows you to stand in your own dignity and truth. It gives you the tools to reflect honestly on what is happening, so that you can decide what you need to do, not reactively, not in anger, but with clarity and care for yourself. And if you choose to confront this reality, do so with grace. Affairs thrive in shadows. When you bring light to the situation, not through accusations or rage, but through clear-eyed acknowledgement, you reclaim your place in the narrative. You shift from being acted upon to acting for yourself, but we're not finished. There are still deeper signs to explore, signs that reveal the most intimate ways a woman's connection to you changes when the affair has become physical. These next messages will challenge you to listen even more carefully, to trust your instincts even more deeply, and to recognize that while infidelity can break your heart, it doesn't have to break your spirit. By now, you may already feel how much these subtle shifts accumulate: the sudden unavailability, the unexplained irritability, the change in language and conversation, the heightened attention to appearance. Each of these is a thread pulling at the fabric of trust between two people. But there are still more subtle messages worth paying attention to, because they reveal something even more intimate: how she relates to you physically and emotionally within the shared space of your relationship. The fifth message is perhaps one of the most painful for a partner to witness: an altered physical affection. This doesn't necessarily mean she pulls away completely or stops touching you altogether. In fact, it can be far more confusing than that. Sometimes the physical affection feels colder, more mechanical, as though it is being performed rather than offered. At other times, it may feel overly enthusiastic or compensatory, as though she's overcorrecting out of guilt. And this is where things become psychologically complex. When a woman is engaged in a physical affair, her own body becomes a landscape of contradictions. On one level, she may still care about you, still want to maintain a connection, still want to soothe your suspicions or alleviate her guilt. On another level, the intimacy she shares with you no longer feels the same because her body carries a parallel experience with another person, a body memory, a sensory overlap, a comparison that she may not even realize she's making. You may feel this altered affection most clearly in moments that once felt natural: the casual touch as she walks past you, the goodnight kiss, the way she used to lean into you on the couch. These gestures become less spontaneous, less warm, less inhabited. Or just as confusingly, they become exaggerated, almost performative, as though she's trying to convince herself as much as you that nothing has changed. But what makes this message so difficult to interpret is that it often doesn't involve total withdrawal. Instead, it's the subtle emptiness in the gestures themselves: a hug that feels hollow, a kiss that feels distracted, a touch that feels more like an obligation than an expression of desire. And this brings us to the sixth message, a message that can seem so small, so easy to overlook, but speaks volumes: the shift in sexual energy. Here is where the affair makes itself felt most clearly, because when a woman is engaged in a physical relationship with someone else, her erotic energy changes. And by erotic energy, I don't simply mean sex itself. I mean the way she brings desire, curiosity, playfulness, and aliveness to the physical space between you. You may notice that she's no longer initiating intimacy in the way she once did, or that when you do initiate, her responses feel muted, distant, or even resistant. Sometimes, paradoxically, she may seem more sexually available, but in a way that feels disconnected from emotional closeness, almost as if sex has become transactional, a way of keeping things smooth on the surface while protecting the secret she carries. And yet, what often stings most is the absence of emotional connection during those intimate moments. Because while sex can still occur in a relationship touched by infidelity, desire itself, true, mutual desire, becomes compromised. The gaze, the presence, the energy that once made physical intimacy feel deeply connective begins to thin out. And in that thinning, you may feel more alone in the bed than if she had simply turned away. This alteration in sexual energy is not about frequency or technique, it's about presence. It's about the way a lover looks at you when they are fully there, fully open, fully desiring you for who you are and what you share together. When that gaze shifts elsewhere, even if the act itself continues, something essential is lost. And this is what makes affairs so painful: not just the breach of trust, but the quiet theft of intimacy itself. The way small gestures, conversations, touches, and erotic energy all change, leaving you feeling as though you are inhabiting a relationship that looks the same on the outside but feels hollow on the inside. So now, as we reflect together, I want you to recognize that these 6 messages are not simply accusations. They are invitations. Invitations to wake up. Invitations to reclaim your sense of self, to see your relationship clearly, and to choose how you want to respond. Not reactively, not in rage, but with dignity, awareness, and strength. You are not helpless here. Even in the face of betrayal, you have choices: to confront with honesty and grace, to protect your own emotional well-being, to seek understanding rather than simply vengeance, and to decide, perhaps for the first time in a long time, what you truly want in a partner, in love, and in your own life. Remember, these signs are not a verdict but a guide. They don't necessarily mean your relationship must end, but they do mean that your relationship must change, because it already has. Whether that change happens through difficult conversations, through repair, or through parting ways, what matters most is that you face the truth without flinching. And if you're hearing this today and feeling that painful ache in your chest, the ache of recognition, the ache of sadness, I want you to know this: you are not alone. So many men suffer in silence, doubting themselves, afraid to name what they feel. But there is power in naming. There is healing in clarity, and there is dignity in responding with awareness and self-respect. As we close this conversation tonight, I want you to carry this message with you. Your intuition matters. What you sense matters. The subtle ways you feel disconnected from your partner are not simply in your head. They are signals worth attending to. And by recognizing these messages for what they are, you reclaim your ability to choose what happens next in your life. If this conversation resonated with you, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. This is a space where we can speak honestly, without judgment, about the complexities of love, trust, desire, and betrayal. Your experience may help another man who is quietly going through the same struggle. And if you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe to the Intimacy Lab so we can continue exploring these delicate but vital conversations together. Here's to living with awareness, dignity, and deep connection, no matter where you are on this journey. Even when all these signs gather: her unavailability, her irritability, the shifts in her communication and language, the sudden attention to appearance, the altered affection, the change in sexual energy, many men remain frozen, not because they are blind, but because they are hopeful. Hope can be beautiful, but it can also become a place where we hide from truth. And so often we tell ourselves stories: she's stressed, she's tired, she's going through something I don't understand. These explanations soothe in the moment, but delay the inevitable reckoning. But let's pause and step back for a moment, because I want to say something important here. Infidelity isn't always about you. In fact, it's very often about her needs, her longings, her disconnection from herself even more than from you. Affairs don't necessarily mean she loves you less. They mean she may be seeking an experience of herself that she feels she has lost, and sometimes, tragically, she searches for that lost self in the arms of someone else. This distinction matters. If you see these 6 messages unfolding before you, you are witnessing her struggle as much as your own heartbreak. And that's why approaching these signs with curiosity rather than just anger can make all the difference for your clarity, your dignity, and your future choices. What I find most fascinating is how these changes often aren't deliberate. She may not even fully realize how her body language has shifted, how her gaze averts more easily, how her words have become more careful or vague, or how her affection feels like an echo of what it used to be. She may be telling herself a story too. This isn't serious. It's just a phase. I can handle this without hurting anyone. And yet, the truth of human connection is that nothing stays hidden for long. Not really. The body speaks. The energy changes. The bond between two people doesn't break overnight, but it frays, thread by thread, until one day you look at each other and realize you're not truly together anymore. That's why these signs feel so disorienting for the partner watching it happen. You sense that something has shifted, but it's as if you can't quite grasp the moment it did, or what exactly has changed. That's because infidelity lives in subtlety long before it ever becomes confession, and this is where another layer of understanding is crucial. Affairs are not simply a betrayal of fidelity. They are often a betrayal of attention, of shared presence, of intimacy as a practice. When her attention turns toward another, it's not just about who she's with, it's about where she's not. She's no longer fully present with you. Her eyes may meet yours, but the gaze is thinner. Her laugh may ring out, but it doesn't reach you the same way. Her touch may still land on your body, but without the warmth of emotional connection. This absence is what you're feeling most deeply, and that absence speaks louder than any words she may offer. It's an absence that isn't always physical or logistical, but emotional. And emotional absence, when it hardens into habit, becomes a wall that no amount of effort on your part can fully climb over. Here's the paradox, though. Many men respond to this absence by giving more, by leaning in, by becoming more accommodating, more attentive, more eager to please. And yet, strangely, this often creates more distance, not less. Because when the affair has crossed into the physical realm, her absence isn't a void that can be filled by your effort. It is a reality that needs to be acknowledged, even if it's painful. And I know that some of you listening may feel a tremendous pressure to fix this, to fight for the relationship, to try harder. But the work that's needed here isn't about effort, it's about clarity. What you're looking for isn't her reassurance, it's your own understanding of what's happening. When you recognize these signs and what they truly mean, you no longer have to second-guess yourself. You can stop twisting yourself into knots trying to decode her behavior. You can begin to stand still, to see clearly, and to decide quietly, courageously what you want your next steps to be. This doesn't mean you must end the relationship. Every situation is different, but it does mean that you must honor your own truth. And your truth begins with listening to what these messages are telling you, not just about her, but about where you are in this relationship, what you have become together, and whether that reality is something you can continue to live with. This is a moment of reckoning, and as painful as it is, it's also a moment of opportunity. Opportunity for honesty, for self-respect, for a deeper understanding of yourself as a man, as a partner, as a human being who deserves to feel loved, desired, and truly connected. And that's why I want you to reflect not just on the signs themselves, but on how they make you feel. What happens inside you when she pulls away, when she's vague, when her touch feels distant or her energy feels hollow? Your feelings are not just reactions, they are information. They are telling you something essential about the reality you are living in. We often minimize our own feelings to protect the relationship, to maintain harmony, to avoid conflict. But harmony that is built on self-denial is fragile and false. True intimacy begins not just when you understand your partner, but when you are willing to understand yourself. So if you are here tonight, listening carefully, feeling that quiet ache of recognition in your chest, I want you to know that you are stronger than you realize. You have already begun the journey toward clarity simply by allowing yourself to see what's happening without turning away. And as you sit with this clarity, I encourage you to be gentle with yourself. It's easy to slip into blame or shame or anger. But this journey is about so much more than fault. It's about finding your own center again, about standing tall even in the face of betrayal. About knowing that your worth was never defined by her choices, but by your own ability to love with courage, to feel with depth, and to move forward with dignity. These 6 messages we've explored so far, Each one is subtle, but together they weave a profound story of disconnection, of attention turned elsewhere, of intimacy quietly unraveling. And yet, this is not the end of your story. This is a moment of awakening. As we continue, I want to invite you to notice something profound about what we've explored so far. These signs, the quiet withdrawal, the vague language, the altered affection, are not loud. They are not declarations. They don't announce themselves. Instead, they whisper, and sometimes they whisper so softly that it is easier not to hear them at all. And yet, that whispering is what makes them so dangerous to the health of the relationship, because they unfold below the surface, quietly eroding the trust and intimacy that once bound you together. By the time these messages become clear, the affair is often far along, not just physically, but emotionally too. It has reshaped her daily experience, reoriented her desires, created a private world to which you no longer have access. But here's the paradox that so many men face in this moment. Even as they see these signs, they often hesitate to act. Why? Because to act is to admit that something has changed. To act is to confront not only her, but themselves, their hopes, their illusions, their own vulnerability. There is a profound loneliness that can come with this realization. Loneliness, not just because you feel disconnected from her, but because you are disconnected from the version of the relationship you thought you had. The version where intimacy was shared freely, the version where your trust felt safe. And so some men stay quiet, hoping that by waiting patiently, things will resolve themselves. But what they often don't realize is that inaction in the face of these signs sends a message too, that you are willing to accept a diminished connection, that you will tolerate disconnection, that you will sit quietly while intimacy erodes. That is why clarity matters. Not so you can accuse or rage or force a confrontation, but so you can stand in the truth of what you are experiencing. So you can respond, not from a place of panic or desperation, but from a place of grounded self-respect. When a woman is engaged in a physical affair, it isn't simply that she is cheating. It is that she is creating a parallel life, a life with another narrative, another rhythm, another emotional home. And every sign we've explored so far reflects this shift. Her unavailability reflects a schedule that now belongs partly to someone else. Her irritability reflects the internal conflict she carries. Her changed language reflects the influence of someone else's presence. Her attention to appearance reflects preparation for another gaze. Her altered affection and sexuality reflect the reorientation of her body's desire. This parallel life doesn't have to look dramatic or scandalous to be real. It can be woven into the fabric of ordinary days, a long lunch, an unexplained trip to the gym, a late-night errand that doesn't quite make sense. What makes it painful is not just what is happening, it's what is no longer happening between the two of you. The intimacy that once felt effortless is now strained. The curiosity you once shared has become one-sided. The sense of being known and seen by each other has thinned out. You might wonder, even now, how this happened. How did we get here? When did we stop looking at each other? When did her smile stop reaching her eyes? When did my compliments stop landing? These questions can haunt you, but they are also an invitation to look at the relationship as it truly is, not as you wish it to be. Because sometimes affairs do not begin out of malice or betrayal. Sometimes they begin as a response to stagnation, to routine, to unspoken dissatisfaction, to a lack of novelty or excitement. This doesn't excuse them, but it explains why they can happen even in relationships that seem, on the surface, to be fine. And here's the hardest truth of all. Sometimes, when we are very honest with ourselves, we realize that we stopped seeing her too. That somewhere along the way, both of you stopped tending the garden of your connection, that boredom or neglect or avoidance set in. And that while her affair is her responsibility, the relationship itself is something both people co-created. This kind of honesty is not about blaming yourself, it's about understanding the larger landscape of your relationship so you can respond wisely. Because clarity without compassion is cold, but clarity with compassion is transformational. You may feel betrayed, and you are right to feel that way. But you can still choose how you hold that betrayal, whether it becomes a wound that defines you or a moment that teaches you something essential about yourself, about intimacy, about love itself. And this is where dignity comes in. Dignity doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. Dignity means allowing yourself to feel your pain without letting it make you small. Dignity means asking honest questions, not to trap her, but to understand what is true. Dignity means knowing that you are worthy of love that is reciprocal, attentive, connected. That's why, as painful as it is to recognize these 6 signs, they are also a gift. They force you to see the relationship as it truly is. They bring you out of denial. They make you ask the deeper questions. Who am I in this relationship? How am I showing up? What kind of intimacy do I want and deserve? You cannot control her choices, but you can control your awareness. You can control the quality of your presence with yourself, with your own heart. You can decide what kind of love you are willing to stand for, not in a way that is rigid or controlling, but in a way that is self-respecting and clear. So tonight, as you sit with all of this, maybe with tears, maybe with anger, maybe with quiet resolve, I want you to know that this conversation is not about ending things unless you choose to. It's about seeing things clearly so that whatever you choose it consciously. Clarity is an act of self-care. It's how you honor your intuition, your experience, and your worth. You may not have chosen this situation, but you can choose how you meet it. With grace, with dignity, with courage, and in doing so, you begin to reclaim not just your relationship or your future, but your very sense of self. Even as we reach this moment together, I can feel the quiet weight this conversation has likely placed in your heart. And I want to say again, you are not alone. To recognize these signs is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of tremendous courage to sit with the discomfort of what you now see more clearly, to feel it fully, to listen to your own emotional landscape, and to ask yourself the difficult but necessary questions about what kind of love you want to cultivate in your life. Because ultimately, all of this, the messages she sends, the shift in her energy, the parallel narrative she is living, it points you toward an even deeper question. What does real intimacy mean to you now? Not what it used to mean when you first met her, not what it meant during the easy seasons, but what it means today, right now, in this new and difficult reality. True intimacy is not simply about shared routines, shared beds, or shared memories. True intimacy is about presence, about feeling seen, known, desired, and accepted in your totality. It is about meeting another human being in the vulnerable spaces between certainty and doubt, between desire and distance, between connection and disconnection. When those spaces go uninhabited, when they are left unattended, the distance can quickly grow too large to bridge. That's why tonight is not really about deciphering her behavior as much as it is about holding up a mirror to your relationship as it stands now. These 6 signs are not just signs of her betrayal, they are signs of what your relationship has become. And whether you choose to stay, to go, to repair, or to release, your power lies in your ability to see things as they are, not as you wish they were. But I want to offer you something even more tender, compassion for yourself, compassion for the part of you that still loves her despite it all. Compassion for the part of you that doubts yourself, that wonders if you could have done something differently, if you could have prevented this. Compassion for the part of you that feels small, abandoned, humiliated, or enraged. Those feelings are not evidence that you are failing. They are evidence that you care deeply. They are evidence that you have been invested in love, that you took the risk of opening your heart. and that willingness to love is not your weakness, it is your beauty, but now the task is different. Now the task is to love yourself enough to face the truth without shrinking, to acknowledge what these signs tell you, not to rush to decision, not to lash out, but to stand still in clarity. To ask her, if you choose to, with calm and dignity, what is really happening here? Where have you gone? Is there a way back? And if so, what would that look like, not just for her to come back, but for both of you to rediscover intimacy, to rebuild trust, to relearn each other? And if you sense that this relationship cannot be saved, if you feel after sitting with this clarity that the bond has frayed beyond repair, then let yourself grieve fully and walk away cleanly. The end of a relationship is not the end of your worth, it is simply the end of a chapter. And it can be an end filled with grace and integrity if you allow yourself to meet it with open eyes and a courageous heart. Many men think that leaving means failure, but sometimes leaving is the bravest act of self-love. And sometimes staying is the braver choice, but only if both partners are willing to meet each other fully again, without secrecy, without performance, with honesty and humility. So as we close this conversation tonight, I want you to breathe deeply and remind yourself, you are not broken. This experience, as painful as it is, does not diminish your value as a man, as a lover, as a human being. You are worthy of love that is full, present, mutual, and true. You are worthy of intimacy that feels safe, alive, playful, and deeply connected. And this moment, this difficult, disorienting moment, is a threshold. It's a place from which you can begin again, wherever that beginning may lead. Whether that means healing this relationship, or whether it means letting it go and stepping into the next chapter of your life with clarity and self-respect. The fact that you are still here, listening, paying attention, tells me something essential about you. It tells me you care about love, you care about connection, you care about intimacy in its truest sense, not just physical closeness, but emotional and spiritual alignment. And that means that no matter how this story ends, your journey continues. Your journey toward deeper self-awareness, toward more authentic connection, toward a relationship where you can show up as yourself, fully and freely, without having to second-guess every glance. Every word, every touch, that is the kind of love that is worth standing for. That is the kind of relationship that can nourish and sustain you. And that is what you deserve. Not a performance, not an arrangement, but a real, living, breathing intimacy where both of you are present, awake, and invested. So tonight, as we part, I want to leave you with this thought. Clarity is not the enemy of love, it is the foundation of love. Because when you see clearly, you can choose wisely, and wise choices are what build a life that feels alive, that feels dignified, that feels true. If you found value in this conversation, if it spoke to something real inside you, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Let this space, the Intimacy Lab, be a place where we can speak openly about what it means to love, to lose, to rediscover, and to begin again. And please, if this helped you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, not because algorithms matter, but because connection matters. Because the more we create spaces where we can talk about these difficult truths with honesty and compassion, the more we all heal. Thank you for being here, for your courage, for your willingness to look at what's hard to look at. You are not alone, and wherever your path leads from here, may it lead you back to yourself whole, dignified, and deeply alive. Here's to living a life that honors your truth, your desire, and your worth. Good night.